I want to talk about the current leadership context today and why it needs a new kind of leader. The current context is where every individual or department or organization is ultimately out for themselves at the expense of others. And so there's what Dr. Marc Gafni calls a global intimacy disorder. We can't feel each other, we can't connect with each other. And there's externalities that leaders, when they make decisions, they only consider the impact on their people and their team or their personal career and ignore the externalities or any of the effects that they have on those outside of their circle. And this kind of leadership, while it for hundreds of years enabled businesses to succeed and grow and develop and people to fulfill their desire for success, we have reached a point where there's the biosphere is actually, it can't sustain itself by our current way of production, manufacturing, management, leadership. The social sphere, if you will, is unsustainable. There's radical polarization, there's extreme inequality, and in the coming couple of years, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 10, we're going to see massive layoffs in jobs. And yes, some of those jobs will be replaced, but many of them won't be. And so the old leadership actually doesn't work in this new climate, in this new sphere, in this new world. The old way of leading, I'm going to call egoic leadership. And I want to be clear, a lot of times egoic, we have this assumption, this baggage that ego equals bad. And I'm not going to say it's bad. Actually, the egoic leadership is simply limited. The egoic leadership is leadership based on me being separate from anyone else and ultimately being really about a competitive win-lose game where the goal is to increase all of the benefits for me and my people at any cost. And the qualities of the ego-based leadership is that it's rigid. It fixates on one way of operating. So maybe it's very tactical, or maybe it's very strategic. Maybe it's holding its team accountable so much so that it's actually micromanaging the team. Or maybe it's fear-based, where it's always criticizing, the leader is criticizing his team without any support. So it's always challenging. Or maybe it's the opposite, it's always supportive. But the quality of egoic leadership is that it fixates on one style or one way of being and attaches to that. And again, is externalizing the impacts that they don't care about and ultimately leading to harm. Also, a quality of egoic leadership is that when there's a critique or a challenge, the egoic leader is defensive, right? Defending themselves or defending their team or buffering their team from the messiness of everything, wanting to control and or blaming others for being at fault, right? So there's a victim mentality, of accusatory mentality, blaming, or in any case, it's a defensiveness, right? There's also a quality of emphasizing reputation and brand over everything else. Like that's actually the most important thing. It's what I look like on the outside, so it's the external facade. And it is focused on either conformity to others, fitting in, or reputation. Do I look good? Do I sound good? Do I look expert-like? Do I look like I know what I'm doing? Or winning focused. So am I better than someone else? Did I win? And all of these qualities actually have their place when they're connected with this post-egoic leadership, what I'm calling unique self-leadership, which is a term coined by Dr. Marc Gafni, a visionary philosopher with the Unique Self Institute. which actually redefines what it means to be a leader and a human. I'm not separate from, I'm actually connected to a field of relationality. I'm actually connected to, so if I'm in a company, my identity is not separate from everyone else's, and we're in a win-lose competitive dynamic. I'm actually connected to this field. So everything that occurs is I'm part of this field. There's no separation. And I'm a unique expression of that field. So imagine, as a metaphor, imagine a tree that grows out of a forest, out of the soil, right? The soil is all connected, the forest ecosystem is all connected, and there's a tree that grows out of it, for example. So I am an expression of this relational field. In that field, there are needs, N-E-E-D-S. There are needs, right? There are lots of needs, right? Whether it be the need to raise revenue, the need for hiring someone else, the need for career progression, the need for conflict resolution, the need for equal opportunity protection, the need for, and the list goes on, right? The need for a strategic plan and directionality, right? So there are needs in this relation of fields. And as a unique self in leadership, I recognize that I have gifts or capacities to meet those needs. Not all of them. There's a unique set of needs in my unique sphere of relationships that only I can meet. My unique set of gifts, my unique set of capacities can meet, and no one else can. Right? And so the practice is to be listening deeply to what is needed and what can I offer. And when, as a unique self in leadership, when I discover where my gifts and capacities can meet the needs of my circle, this unleashes tremendous energy, tremendous aliveness and purpose. There's intrinsic purpose in this discovery. Another quality of a unique self leader is that my compass, my discernment for how to make decisions, is my deepest heart's desire. Desire is my compass. Intention. So what do I desire for myself? What do I desire for you, my co-worker? What do I desire for the company? And what do I desire for the world? As a unique self in leadership, I consistently ask these questions and I share them genuinely, authentically with the people around me so that they can either be participating in those intentions, those desires, or share their own. And another quality of a unique self in leadership is that instead of being in a competitive relationship to other people, there's a synergistic relationship to other people. So I'm actually looking for where can I find other unique self leaders that recognize themselves as connected in a shared field of relationality, and how can I synergize our gifts together to meet a need that we both can see. So we can meet a need that we both can see together. And this becomes really a co-creative possibility, co-creative relationship. So creativity emerges through these synergies in unique selves. Innovation emerges through unique self synergies. Organizational development happens through unique self synergies, meaning everyone that's involved, to the extent that they are recognizing that they are connected within a shared field of relationality and that they each have unique gifts to give, unique capacities to meet the needs in that shared field, there's no competition and there's no winning and losing. There is a shared purpose that we generate together that we can achieve something together. Again, not merely through egoic strategic planning or not merely because there's an economic incentive, although all of those can be part of it, but the deeper realization of unique self-leadership and the synergies that it allows is that we are drawn to give our greatest gifts to meet the greatest needs that we all can see in this relational field, right? And let's say there's a there's a major change at the company such that the major customer is pulling out, right? A major customer is pulling out and can no longer be, we're no longer selling to that customer. And so as unique self leaders, let's say the executives at the company, to the extent that they're identified with their unique selves, they will recognize that there's multiple bottom lines at play here. There's multiple needs that we're attending to. One is profit maximization, one is economic success. Two is people. How do I ensure that the people are taken care of, that they're thriving and that they're growing and that their needs are being met? And three, planet. To what extent am I impacting beyond my company? Right? And so they're interested in coming together and bringing each of their perspectives together to make sure that the company can have maximal financial success with minimal harm to the employee. And so even if there is a layoff situation, they're going to be helping to create bridges with the employees to where they can find a new job or develop more skills, right? Or in other words, give them a chance to thrive, right? As opposed to just cutting them off and letting them go. Which an egoic leader would say, it's not my problem. This is business. I got the hard truth of the finances, right? Unique self leaders struggle with the complexities of what life is actually like, the human element as well as the company, the corporate element. That these are both important. Another quality of a unique self leader is that they are able to manage polarities, manage dialectics, if you will, manage what seem to be competing or opposing needs, conflicting needs that seem to be against each other's odds. For example, the business interests and the people interests, right? Relationships and tasks, right? Directiveness and egalitarian facilitation, right? Prediction and control and sensing and responding. So these are seeming opposites, but they're both needed. And unique self-leaders recognize the importance of these opposites and are interested in participating in a dynamic balance among them, which ultimately leads toward more broad-based integrative solutions and better outcomes across the board. That's actually the nature of managing a polarity. Right? Along that same vein, a unique self-leader is carefully attuned to the masculine and feminine dynamics in any situation. And I don't necessarily just mean men and women, because the quality of masculinity and femininity lives in every person to different degrees. And so, for example, a masculine quality is to drive forward and make progress and be productive. A unique self-leader would also recognize the importance of pausing, allowing for feedback along the way, perhaps adapting the approach, making sure that people's voices are online, meaning it's not just an echo chamber. Right? I'm actually opening up and inviting feedback, for example. Similarly, if a leader is working at a nonprofit, like one of my clients did, she works at a nonprofit where healing and transformation is part of the mission of the nonprofit. And so there's a lot of emphasis on relational healing within the company, right? So there's conflict. There's a lot of time and energy spent on making sure everyone can be felt and seen and heard, and that people are able to go through a growth process and healing if there's ever any rupture or any conflict that's going on. A unique self-leader, like the leader I actually coached, would recognize how important it is to not get lost in that, to be able to also hold her people accountable, making sure that plans are in place, that goals are established, that it's not merely we're just dwelling in this space of relationality, but we're actually also taking steps and moving forward, and we have a goal to achieve, and we're here together to move towards that goal. So a unique self leader is able to navigate and dynamically balance the masculine and feminine. And of course, gender balance, but it's not, the unique self leader is not interested in artificially creating the same number of men and women in any given space. That would actually potentially be an egoic form of leadership because it would be based on simple math and numbers and quotas and not actually tending to the relational field and actually what's needed. Again, the unique self leader is attending to and attuning to what's actually needed in any given situation. Another quality of unique self leadership is that it democratizes greatness, meaning it realizes that every single person involved has their own unique greatness, that everyone is born with and has a unique set of gifts to give. And when there's a moment to give those gifts, as a unique self leader, I step back and I watch and I honor and I receive that person's greatness. And I invite them to continue growing and sharing that greatness, even as I share my own greatness and share other people's greatness. So that's a super important quality, that greatness is democratized. It's not merely for the elite, and it's not merely for, I'm just the hero here to save the day. Everyone is a hero in a sense, in the sense of giving their gift for the larger whole, for the larger organizational and the world even. So how does a unique self relate to other egos? People who are in egoic-based leadership or egoic tendencies within themselves. Well, the ego is always going to come and try to hijack or claim or fixate on something. Even as a unique self leader makes accomplishments and achieves things, the ego will always come up and say, that was mine, and we'll try to freeze frame it and rigidly attach to it, or maybe even feel like, oh, I'm better than so-and-so, and that sort of thing. This is actually a natural process of the self's attempt to develop, so that you're not always, that there's actually a structure that as I achieve things, I actually have a new level of capacity, right? And so this tendency is okay. Right? If we had to reinvent everything in every moment and create everything freshly anew in every moment, it would be impossible to survive and live. So the ego's role is actually to create structure around my novel creativity as a unique self. And so the unique self recognizes the ego has its place and holds it with compassionate presence. Right? Meaning, right, so for example, as a leader and the quarterly performance reviews come around, the ego wants to be known and recognized and say, hey, I made these accomplishments and these achievements. And the unique self will recognize that this is important to name and say, and even while there's also room for receiving critiques and feedback and constructive criticism, and that even if I've made a success, it doesn't mean I've stopped and I can rest on my laurels, but actually there's always more to do and there's always more success to be had. So the unique self holds it and continues to grow, continue making sure that the ego doesn't rigidify or solidify too much, so that there's always the aliveness that's available and the creativity that's available and the genuine listening for what is needed now and what can I do to respond to the needs right now. The ego, or the unique self, also holds strategy in as an adaptive container, right? So strategy in a strategic plan is not rigid, but it's something that merely helps everyone create structure to focus their attention. But I'm open to new emergence as things continue to evolve. So I can adapt the plan, change the timelines, change who does what over time, but I do keep a structure as our aligning structure and our focus. So these are some of the qualities of unique self leadership. And this is something that there are some companies that are already there that are attempting this. There are companies that that are practicing human holistic leadership, they call it, or conscious leadership. John Mackey from Whole Foods had with his work partner at the Conscious Capitalism Institute, they've coined the term conscious capitalism. Stegen Leadership Institute has a notion of integral leadership that is continually aligning with deeper purpose and larger scope of concern and consideration and an evolutionary or ever developing sense of self. You have Amazon has purchased a company that sells shoes, Zappos, that embraced what's called holacracy, which is a way that it gives broad distributed leadership to many people in the company. Frederick Laloux was a consultant at McKinsey, and he wrote a book called Reinventing Organizations, and he outlined examples of later stage organizations that are working with what I'm calling unique self-leadership. He doesn't use the term, but that's what I'm referring to, that where people are governed by purpose of the organization, as opposed to merely a top-down structure. And people are invited to be showing up as their whole selves and not just their reputation or their image or their competitive side of things. So that's an example. Frederick Laloux, and he talks about a Dutch organization that Bursog, I think it was called, that was a healthcare organization that had tremendous results after they went from a top-down bureaucratic model of community health workers to a distributed, decentralized, self-organizing, self-managing structure that empowered people wherever they were to take on their own unique self-leadership and to respond to what was needed and make decisions based on overarching purpose. So I do believe that as more and more companies face struggles to adapt to this constantly changing situation in the world, the unpredictability, the uncertainty, the complexity, the amount of information that leaders are meant to hold on to, we're not going to be able to succeed as much in the egoic form of leadership, the predict and control top-down leadership, and that companies will continue to experiment at the edges of possibility and lean into what I'm calling unique self-leadership, where it's more complex, it's more holistic, it's more integrated, and it's more considerate of a larger system. And ultimately, it's more meaningful and enlivening for everyone involved, actually. It's more empowering, it's more humane, and it's more exciting to be leading as a unique self and working for a unique self leader who is running an organization where unique self synergies is the ongoing intention. So I hope this is useful. For more information, check out Your Unique Self by Dr. Marc Gafni or Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux. There's Robert Keegan, who wrote a book on deliberately developmental organizations, a book called In Over Our Heads, or Immunity to Change is a good one. And see what's possible. See how you can develop further as a unique self. Thanks a lot.